Hey, I'm Allison. I am a literacy specialist and I have a website called Learning at the Primary Pond for K-2 teachers. And tonight I'm coming to you live to chat about dividing words into syllables. And the reason why I wanted to chat with you, well, a couple of things. A, I get asked about this topic a ton. And then B, I actually did some free webinars last week, I think it was, and we talked a little bit about dividing words into syllables, but I really didn't get to go in depth just because there was so much that I wanted to cover during those free webinars. So those are over, but I thought I would take this opportunity to show you some more examples and really talk about the process or how I teach my kids to divide words into syllables. And before I really get into it, I'm curious to know in the comments, A, if you learned this as like a student, maybe in undergrad or your master's degree, and B, if you currently teach this to your students. So let me know in the comments, and I'm actually going to pick a commenter to win some syllable division digital games. So hopefully it showed up in the little post there, but I linked to 2 games, and on Friday I'm going to pick some winners. So in the comments, let me know if you learned how to divide words into syllables in your undergrad program or master's degree, and then also let me know if this is something that you teach your students. Hey Eileen, so glad you could join me. All right, another thing I want to do too quickly before I get into this is ask you to tag any friends who this might be helpful to. The whole reason why I like to talk about this topic is because it's not something that I was taught during my undergrad program or my master's degree, but it's been insanely helpful to me and my students. When I first learned how to teach kids to divide words into syllables, I learned it in the context of helping struggling readers or students who have dyslexia. However, what I found is that this is something that is helpful for all kids, even your higher readers. I'm also curious if you have had higher readers who maybe, like for example, if they're reading a longer word, they skip a part, or they just don't know how to tackle it, or they maybe read the beginning and kind of stumble through the end. Curious if that has happened to you, because I really see this not just as being helpful for those lower readers or struggling readers, like yes, it's amazing for them, but for my higher readers too, this gives them the tools that they need to tackle multisyllabic words. And if you know how like texts progress in terms of difficulty and what they contain, then you know that like by early first grade, typically kids are reading or encountering some simple multisyllabic words in text. So this is something that happens pretty early on, and they need to know what to do with these words, right? They need to have strategies for tackling them. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, this one thing that I'm showing you right now is not a multisyllabic word, but I'll explain what this is in a second and why it has this little door here. But anyway, this is a strategy that helps all kids. It's actually often left out of a lot of phonics programs. I have a phonics program called From Sounds to Spelling. It actually has a big discount through this Friday, September 25th, and I included the link hopefully in the post if it went through. But anyway, my program addresses this, and it actually walks you through doing this because I feel that this is something that's so important for kids to learn. Because yes, do they need to learn how to spell one syllable words? For sure. But they need to learn how to read and write multisyllabic words. It's also great for your higher kids. Maybe most of your kids are working on vowel teams. Your higher kids can work on multisyllabic words with vowel teams. So absolutely helpful. This is not something that I learned. Thank you to everybody who has been tagging this, or not tagging this, but tagging other people, because this is something that I would love to reach as many educators as possible. Again, because I did not learn this until I sought out information on my own and then eventually paid for training. So I would love to be able to share this just with everybody who is interested or who this would help. So let's see what everybody's saying. Shatana says, did not learn this at all. Tanya learned about it not during school. Stephanie was just thinking of how to do this. Perfect. So glad you're here, Stephanie. Eileen says no and yes. Victoria eventually did a deep dive on her own. So it it looks like a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people really didn't get this. And so that's why I want to share this. And this is also what I'm going to show you is not stuff that I ever would have, like maybe like 10, 12, 15 years ago. If you had told me that I was going to be teaching this, I'd be like, no, like this is not like appropriate, or it's not useful for first and second graders, but it so is. So it really, this knowledge has helped me, it has surprised me, and I'm really excited to share it with you. And I also have a lot of examples to go through. So if you were on my free webinars the other week, those are over, but we're going to go through more examples because I wanted to go more in depth. And also something to know, if you have my phonics program, and again, I included the link in this post, you don't have to worry about how to teach this or when to teach this because it's fully integrated into the program, and the lessons tell you, okay, now we're going to teach this, and this is how you do it with the kids. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Thank you all so much for sharing your feedback on how you've learned it, if you've learned it. Super excited to share this with you, and feel free to comment throughout, ask questions, and again, I will be pulling a couple of winners for this. I have two options. So I have a first grade like digital syllable practice set for you, or you can choose the second grade one. So either one. So feel free to keep commenting, and then on Friday I will pull a winner for one of those little digital sets. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, so the reason why I have this thing up here that has the word got with the little door is, and this is not something that I made up, I learned this, but I feel that it's the best way to start teaching kids about syllables. Obviously just a one syllable word here. But when we start talking about vowel sounds, and I typically don't do this in kindergarten, you can if you have some advanced kindergartners, but I usually save it more for like early first grade, early-ish first grade, to mid first grade, when you start talking about your short vowel sounds and your long vowel sounds, that really naturally leads into a discussion of open and closed syllables. So you're working in your phonics program, whether it's mine or something else, and you get to that point, and once the kids are understanding, or once you're introducing this concept of short and long, it really makes sense to integrate open and closed syllables, this concept. So this little door strip is from sounds to spelling. Hard having a program that starts with that word, from sounds to spelling. And the way you set it up is when you print it out, it looks like this and everything is blank. And then you fold this in and you write a word like got where there's another word hiding inside it. So here's how we do it. And it would sound different depending on the group of kids that I'm introducing it to or whatever, but okay. So I would have them read this word, and maybe they could read it, or maybe we would have to go got, however we have them read it, right? So I'll say, okay, so notice that the door is closed, and then I'll ask them, it depends if I've introduced short or long vowels. I'm usually introducing it right around then, so I might ask them, okay, what does the vowel say in this word? And they'll say, ah. Okay, that's the short O sound, ah, right? So the door is closed. Now the door is open. What does the word say? And they'll say go, hopefully. So what does the O say in go? It says O, the long O sound. So when the door is open, the vowel yells out its name, go, right? So long O. But when the door is closed, it becomes a short vowel, ah, right? So then we go into the discussion of, we do a few of these. So you can do things like the word hip, for example, high and hip. Trying to think of what else, like men, me, and men. You can do this with a few examples. I just kind of walk them through a few examples and try to, get them noticing things. And then eventually I'll explain that, okay, so this is an example of, it has one syllable, right? We've talked about syllables, we've practiced pounding syllables. They know this idea of syllables, but they haven't really applied it to a lot of words by this point. So we've definitely done phonological awareness stuff with it for sure. But anyway, then I'll say, okay, this is a one syllable word, and the door is closed. This is a closed syllable. One syllable word, one closed syllable. A closed syllable has a vowel, one vowel, and that vowel is usually short, okay? Now this is an example, this is not exactly how I'd say it to them, but you get the idea. This is an example of a one syllable word, and it's an open syllable, right? The door is open, so the vowel calls its name out, oh. An open syllable has a long vowel sound. It ends with the vowel, and the vowel is long. So we have our closed syllable, and then we have a different word, our open syllable. So I feel like this lends itself really nicely into starting to talk about breaking words into syllables. Again, this is a very basic level, and I'll do it like early to mid first grade. I don't typically do it before then unless I've got some really advanced kiddos, but I go through some other examples with them to just kind of, and then we'll do some kind of practice activity. From Sounds of Spelling has some follow-ups that you can do with them just to focus on like, okay, like this is a closed syllable, this is an open syllable. They need some practice with just those terms and looking at one syllable words before we really take this and run with it. So that's kind of what the instruction looks like. And that's really like one day or a couple of days in itself. And so from there, we gradually work on breaking words up into syllables, right? So it's a one syllable, open and closed. And this won't all fit. I wish my document camera was taller. There might be a way. I should stack books or something, but I'll show you bit by bit this poster. This comes from Sounds to Spelling, my phonics program. And from there, that little open and closed syllable thing, then I gradually start teaching them. So those are two syllable types, right? Open and closed. From there, I teach them the rule that when there are, excuse me, when there's two consonants between two vowels, you divide the syllable between the consonants. And I will show you that momentarily, but beforehand, I kind of wanted to show you what we're working toward. Now, I don't go from this to like all of these steps, right? I know that one will fit there, but I go from this and then I gradually will teach them like two syllable words, divide between the consonants, like, and we add on different syllable types as I teach them as part of my phonics program. Again, it's all laid out for you. If you have From Sounds to Spelling, this will still be helpful information for you, but it is laid out for you and it tells you exactly what to do. So anyway, we're kind of gradually building up to this, and this process is how we break a word into its syllables. I really wish I had some books to stack this on, but okay. So, and some of this won't make sense to you if this is new to you right now, but we're gonna do examples and then it will make sense to you. So the first thing we do, and this, again, this is not, we don't dive into all of this. It takes time in teaching different phonics patterns for us to get here. But eventually the kids are looking for an ending of ES, ING, or ED after T or D. We'll talk about exactly what that means in a little while here. Then they're supposed to circle the vowel sounds. They underline each consonant between the vowels. You're going to see me label the vowels with V and the consonants with C. You'll see me use the syllable division rules, and I'll talk about those to break them up. Eventually, we label the syllable types, and then they read each syllable and the entire word. So the purpose of this is to teach them how to decode tricky words that they do not know, okay? So every time I show you a word, or if you were my students, I would not read you the actual word, because the point of this little activity is to get you to figure out how to break up the word, use that information to figure out what the vowel sounds probably are, and then decode the word. So you're going to see me go through examples, and each time I would not be telling the kiddos what the word is until we went through that process. So this process is a lot if you've never seen it before. Again, this poster is from my phonics program, but we're going to really break it down and go through. I have a number of examples here for you, more than we had time for in those phonics webinars. So we're going to go through all of this and just talk about how I do it, how I teach the kids, and also just know that this stack of words, I would never go from this basic open and closed explanation like straight into all of this. It takes time. As I said, it happens over time in my phonics program as we teach different patterns. So it takes time to build up to the point where the kids are able to do all of these examples. So just keep that in mind as we're going through things. Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate that. Yeah, and if you are just joining us now, I would still love to hear if you learn this stuff in your undergrad or master's. I'd also love to know if you teach this to your kids. I am going to be picking several winners from the comments on Friday, and then those winners are going to get to choose either my first grade or second grade, like a little digital pack of syllabication practice activities. So make sure you get your comment in there so that you can be in the running for pulling names on Friday. And then also I encouraged you earlier, but you may have missed this, to just tag any educators you know that would benefit from learning this, because this is something that I would love to share with as many people as possible, because I did not learn it myself. I had to seek it out and also pay for training that covered a lot more than this. But I would love to share this with as many teachers as possible. All right, so getting into our actually breaking up the words into syllables, one of the first types of words that I start working with kids on is a 2-syllable compound word with closed syllables. And often, you know, some kids may already be able to read them already. That's great. But I like these because they're simple. It's same kind of syllable, and the syllable division rule is my favorite one because it's the easiest one and it's the first one that I introduced. All right, so you may have remembered from this little poster that the first thing we do at this level anyway is we circle the vowel sounds. So I have them use red to do that. Okay. And then now we are only worried about the consonants that are between those vowels. Okay, we're not worried about this stuff that's going on out here. We're just worried about the consonants between those vowels. That's awesome, Kelly. Super. So we're worried about these consonants, and also the kids will know by this point, or will have talked about the fact that every syllable has a vowel sound. So not necessarily, it won't be as simple as like, oh, I see one vowel, I know that that's a syllable, because it gets more complicated when you get into things like silent E, some word endings. We'll talk about that later, but basically, right now they see one vowel, they know that's one syllable. So we've got 2 syllables, and we're only going to worry about the consonants between the vowels. So I like to, different people do it differently, but I underline each consonant like this, okay? So now I'm going to label the vowels with V and the consonants with C, okay? And now again, the first syllable division rule that I said that I teach is when there's 2 consonants between the vowels, you divide the word up right between the consonants. This is the easiest one in my opinion. So as you can see here, we've got 2 consonants, so I simply divide it up. Okay? So now it's fun to have them do this, right? But you might be teaching remotely and that's not an option. So no big deal. You can just have the kids copy the word and then they can draw a line, and that can just even be on scratch paper. It doesn't have to be on little strips like this, right? I'm just using this because it's easiest to show you. And in the phonics program, there's actually strips of words. So you would just, if you wanted to, the kids could always copy them onto a piece of paper and just draw a line. That's always an option. But in the phonics program, you just print out a sheet, you give it to the kids, and they cut it into the strips, and then they have their words and they're ready to go. Again, if you're having them copy the word, don't read the word to them. You want this process to have the purpose of dividing the word into the syllable for actually decoding it. See lots of did not learn this, seeing some, few people have learned it. Awesome, I hope this is helpful. Okay, so we've got our vowels, we've got our consonants underlined, we cut the words between the syllables, and then that's it when I'm originally teaching it. I do not worry about having them code the syllable types until a little bit later. Okay, now if we're at the point where we are coding the syllables, then as I mentioned earlier, these are 2 closed syllables. We've got short vowels. So the notation that I use is CL for closed. So then they can read, right? Now they can read k, at, cat, fish, cat, fish. So the final part is them just reading each syllable and then the entire word. And speaking of the purpose of having it be reading, obviously we're doing it like this for practice, right? But the ultimate goal is for them to be able to read a book and do this. And of course, they're not going to be cutting the page in the book apart, but this gets their brain thinking in that way. And so I also do start talking to my kids like, okay, well, this is where we're practicing this, but look, when you're reading this book, this is how we break up the words into syllables. You know, maybe you use your finger. You look for the same things in text. You're applying it right, even if it's in a slightly different way. So you do have to talk to them about making that connection because the ultimate purpose is for them to be doing it in the books that they're reading. Hey, Amanda, so I'm using something called eCam that is specific to Facebook. And that is nice because it allows, you know, my picture to be up there as well as the document camera. And my document camera is called an IPEVO, I-P-E-V-O. Okay, so that was one example, right? We have a lot more. Okay, so next up we have this word. Again, I'm not reading it to my kids. So we're going to circle the vowel sounds. We are going to underline. Okay, so here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and this is why I picked this word out to share with you. They will at first notice 3 consonants, so they need to be told to look out for digraphs because we're not so much underlining each consonant, we're more or less underlining each consonant sound. So instead of doing 2 underlines here, what you need to teach them to do is keep the digraph together. Remember, digraph is 2 letters that come together to make one sound. The T and the H say in this word, right? And so we underline that as 1 unit and this as 1 unit. And the reason why that matters is because if we don't underline it as 1 unit, then we end up with 3 consonants. What do we do with that? Remember, we're practicing 2 consonants between the vowels, right? And so we divide the word between the consonants. But anyway, we need to do V, C, C, V. This is the rule. From Sounds of Spelling, there's a poster and they'll just look up at the wall and they will see, okay, V, C, C, V. I divide it between the consonants. They cut it. And then we're going to code. So these are 2 closed syllables because they end with consonant sounds. That means they have short vowels. So the type of the syllable often will tell us how the vowel sound is pronounced, which is really helpful when kids get into longer words. When they figure out what syllable type it is, that helps them figure out how to say the vowel sounds. And in English, when you've got multisyllabic words, the vowel sounds are challenging, right? So this helps with the vowel sounds too. So we've got b, f, bath, t, b, tub, bathtub. 2 closed syllables. There we go. And I picked this one out because I wanted to show you that consonant digraph in the middle. All right. Next up, we have this word. So here we have 2 vowels again. We have our consonant. I was kind of doing that out of order, but you circle the vowels, you underline the consonant, and then we label underneath. Now we have an issue, right? So first, for a while, we just practice dividing the word between 2 consonants a little bit simpler. Eventually, we get to the point where they're ready to learn another syllable division rule, and this other syllable division rule says if there is 1 consonant between the vowels, the first thing we try is just dividing the word up before the consonant. So because it's not just two consonants, easy divide, I'm going to use my pen, or the kids would use their pencil, before I'm going to cut to just try this out. So, okay, so let's try it here. This is the first thing we want to try. Thanks to everybody who's tagging. Love to share this. And so here we now have created an open syllable. Remember the open syllable, just like we showed with this little door is open, door is closed thing. This open syllable here has a long vowel, ends with a long vowel, ray. Ven, raven. Yep, that's a word. So that confirms that there's 1 consonant and I can divide it before that consonant. Okay, so now we have an open syllable and a closed syllable. Raven. So in this case, they kind of read it before they were actually, coding the syllables and dividing it, but that's okay. That's necessary when there's 1 consonant. And the reason why it's necessary when there's only 1 consonant is because, I had my little things out of order here, because of words like this. So here we again have our vowels, we have our consonant. So again, remember the rule is if there's 1 consonant between the vowels, we try to divide it right before that consonant. So now we have lie, right? Open syllable, livid, livid. Doesn't sound like a word I know, so let me try the other way. Live, id, livid. That's a word. That means super mad. Sometimes if it's like a trickier word, you might have to like give them a little bit of a hint, and that's okay. But what I did here was I first tried to push it before the consonant, right? That's what we try first when there's one consonant. But that didn't work. It didn't make a real word, so we had to push it after the consonant. So that one is a little tricky, and that's why I don't introduce these rules immediately, because when there's two consonants, it's just simpler. But here when we have one consonant, it could be this or it could be this. A little bit weird. Another weird thing too, just about this in general, you may look up words in different dictionaries and see different syllable division, like that they divide the word differently, which is a little bit weird. And sometimes you'll run into words where you're like, I don't know about this one. So my advice to you is this. A, use the Merriam-Webster, I think that's how you say it, online, because that I feel like is pretty good and accurate. But B, also realize that these rules are really intended for kids to, I mean, and adults too, but for people to be able to divide words into syllables using like these rules and these patterns. Sometimes you might have an oddball word, but if you find one, you're like, I don't know what to do with this, look it up in Merriam-Webster, but also don't stress about it too much. It's okay if you present to the kids a word or something and then you're like, this is kind of a weird one. It's okay to show them that sometimes you don't know, sometimes there are ones that are a little bit different. They need to be able to deal with that uncertainty when they are dividing words in the books that they read, because they may find uncertainty too. So it's okay for them to see you encountering that uncertainty and just kind of like doing your best and keep on going. So it's okay if something comes up and it's weird, look it up, but just, just model doing your best to figure out what the word is, because we have to come back to the fact that we are not, we're not trying to be syllable division scientists, right? We're trying to decode words. And so if we don't do it 100% perfect all of the time, that's okay. We need to really just be able to take this information and decode words. But anyway, kind of got off on a tangent there. The reason why I have this word for you is because I showed you that it's not always divided. If there's one consonant before the consonant in the middle, it can be divided after the consonant as well, depending on the word. So now here we have a closed syllable, live, id, livid. We got two closed syllables, okay? Because they both end with consonants and they've got their short vowels. If you're just joining us now, so happy to have you. Don't forget to leave a comment so that you can be entered to win one of those little digital packs I have for you. There's a couple of links that hopefully showed up in this post. And on Friday, I'm gonna be pulling my winners. So this is one example. I usually will give them practice with this rule for a little while, at least if it's first grade, and then I'll say, hey, but also this. So in From Sounds to Spelling, the examples that like the first graders and second graders too work with when you first introduce this rule, I limited the examples and the practice rules so that all the words have one consonant and they're divided here. So they practice just this at first, and then I say, well, not all the time. And then I introduce this little complication, okay? Those are actually the only 3 syllable division rules that I teach in K-2. Now, if I'm getting up into third, or maybe if I have some advanced second graders, there are some words like poet, for example, where you actually divide the word between 2 vowels. But for kids to learn the V/V rule, they need to have a really thorough understanding of vowel teams and diphthongs. And most second graders, by the end of the year, maybe they're getting there, but they need to really, really know those vowel teams and diphthongs before they get into that 4th syllable division rule. So I'm not going to cover it here. You may need to know it if you teach like higher than second grade, but we're not going to cover it here because I mostly focus on K-2. That's awesome, Gabriella. Super, Catherine. Okay, so now I just want to go through some other things like, I think I have a couple syllable words. I have some different syllable types just so that you can see like what else you might encounter. And some of the other syllable types. So one word we have is this. And again, I'm not reading the word out loud. The whole purpose of this is to get my kids to decode it. So here we notice that we actually have 3 consonants. Uh-oh, what do we do? So when you're introducing words with blends, you want kids to have practiced and learned about blends already, because if they don't know about blends, then they're not going to know what to do with this. But this can get a little bit tricky, but when I see this, I know that the T and the R, it looks like those are going to get blended together. And so for that reason, I'm just going to mark this as 1. Now this is not one sound. The T and the R are distinct sounds, even though we can say that the sounds get blended together, right? It's not one sound, but I'm going to keep them together because it's a blend. So just wanted to make that distinction. So we can still use the VCCV rule, just like before. We cut between the consonants, and again, it's a little bit tricky because we have a blend, not one sound, 2 separate sounds. But so now we have our syllables. We have closed, so we have it's, dis, act, tract, distract, right? And so this is how From Sounds to Spelling deals with it. You will start working on blends with the kids, and then eventually you'll start working on 2-syllable words with those blends, so they can take what they're learning and apply it not only to learning how to spell 1-syllable words and work with 1-syllable words, but learning to work with 2-syllable words. And that's also a great way to differentiate. You know, the whole class in my phonics program, or your whole group, depending on how you're teaching the program, the whole group will work with these words. But for your higher kids, maybe they're actually spelling 2-syllable words with blends because they're more advanced. That's another way to differentiate. I know some people are asking about saving this. Hopefully it is recording to my Facebook page. Maybe there might be a little drop down where you can save it as well. Not 100% sure, but hopefully it's recording. Okay, so this is the next one that I wanted to show you. So here we're actually getting into larger than 2-syllable words, okay? So now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. And I don't start working with them on this until we have learned about magic E or silent E, whatever you call it. And so at this point, they now have to look out for that magic E that might be at the end of a syllable, right? And so on this little poster that I showed you a lot earlier, it says circle the vowel sounds, not just the vowels that are written on the page, but the vowel sounds. Some vowels do not make a sound, right? So I'm still going to circle my vowels, but I'm actually going to cross this off so that I know that it's not a vowel sound. It's not a separate syllable, right? The E makes the A long, and we will have learned about that before I ever introduce, you know, multisyllabic words with magic E. We first talk about it just in 1-syllable words at a very basic level. Okay, so we've got all these vowels, but we follow the same process, right? Looks a little bit trickier, but this gets, and honestly, kids can do this. Once they learn the VCCV syllable division rule and closed syllables, they can start working on simple 3-syllable words with closed syllables, and they feel so powerful because they're like, oh my gosh, I can read these 3-syllable words. You can use these rules to have them dividing longer words that they might otherwise not know how to tackle. So anyway, same process. We're only worried about the ones between the consonants between the vowels. So we've got this, and then we've got this, and then we're not worried about this one, right? Because it's magic E, it's not actually a vowel sound. So V, C, C, V, and then we have a C and V. So a little bit more going on here, but we're focusing here, and then we're focusing here, right? So two consonants, my favorite, the easiest one, typically. So there we go with that. Thank you, Jennifer, so much for helping with saving. And then now we have to deal with the one vowel, right? So I guess we can't with this word. Did I do that right? Yeah, I did. Okay, sorry. I just got distracted. So now we already did this, and then we're now looking between the U and the A, right? We're not worried about anything else. So we've got one consonant there. And we can start decoding to help us figure out if we divide it before or after the consonant. So we can go ahead and read in, and then we have this, and we don't know if it's here, and this would make it Q, right? The long U, Q, in, Q, or it could be in cub at, right? So we either have, and we're checking both ways. We're checking incubate, and hopefully they'll know that's a word, like incubating chicks. Maybe they've had that experience before. And they should see that if we do incu like this, that makes it an open syllable, the vowel is long, then we don't have to worry about trying this. Because if we recognize a real word like this, then we just go ahead and cut it before the consonant. And so there we have our 3 syllables. So just to refresh, when there's one consonant, it's trickier. We try dividing the word before the consonant. If it makes a real word, we're good to go. But if it doesn't make a real word, then we try it after the consonant and we see if that makes a real word. And you may have to help them a little bit if they're not recognizing like incubate, that's okay. But it teaches them to be flexible and to try out both ways in their own reading as well. So this one was a little longer. We used 2 syllable division rules and we have 3 different syllable types. So this is a closed syllable, short vowel, ends with a consonant, that's how I know. And then here we have an open syllable, long U, and then here we have a magic E syllable, okay? Because we've got that silent E. Remember, that doesn't make a sound, so it's not counted as a vowel sound, it's not circled, and it's not its own syllable. So there we have it, incubate. So that one was a little more challenging. Now let's look at a word that has a couple of syllable types that we have not talked about yet. So, let me take a sip of water. Okay. So this is a little bit more challenging, and I would not present to kids a word like this unless we've practiced R controlled or R influenced vowels and vowel teams, okay? With the way my phonics program is set up, you're teaching a phonics pattern, like for example, vowel teams, and then you're applying it to the multisyllabic word work. So it's very much synced, right? Like I said at the beginning, I would not start introducing all of this stuff. This stuff that I'm showing you would never be one lesson for my kiddos, right? It absolutely would not be. It would be broken up over periods of time and it would be integrated with the different like phonics patterns that you're teaching. So here we have this word, right? And the vowels are a little bit trickier this time. So often when there's an R right after the vowel, the R, as the kids would have learned already, would be influencing the sound of that vowel, right? And so we're actually going to circle this because those sounds can't really be pulled apart. And then we're also going to circle this because yes, there's 2 vowels here, but it's a vowel team. And again, when we're doing the syllable division, we're looking for vowels that or we're looking for vowel sounds rather than the actual vowels on the page. So 1 syllable, 2 syllables. So this is a little bit different, right? Okay. So now, though, we still have our consonant there, our vowel. And so we've got 1 consonant in the middle, and we have to ask ourselves, well, this is R controlled, right? So it can't be an open vowel, right? Or it can't be an open syllable with a long vowel, but then we also have this. Now, this one is tricky because it's not clear, like, well, do I divide it here? Do I divide it here? So what I would say to the kids is just, I actually recognize part of this word, and I recognize the chunk that says teen. And so for that reason, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it like this. So there may be a more scientific explanation of that, but that's what I would say to them in this example. I just wanted to present you with an example that wasn't as straightforward, okay? And so now we have an R-influenced or R-controlled syllable type, and then we also have a vowel team syllable type, okay? So 13. This would be a word that they know. Some of these examples maybe aren't words that I would choose for kids unless I knew that they didn't know them. Generally speaking, the types of words that I'm trying to choose and the types of words that I included in the phonics program from sounds to spelling are words that I hope that kids may have heard before, not all of them, but some of them, and words that I don't believe that they're going to be instantly familiar with, right? Because it's not as good of a drill if the kids are immediately recognizing every word. Are they going to recognize some of the words for sure. It's not foolproof, right? But in the program, it chooses, the words are chosen for you, and they're designed to be words that hopefully the kids have heard before, but if not, you can explain what they are. But they're actually going through the process of dividing them into their syllables, and then they're actually required to do that work and break things up and decode them rather than just recognizing them instantly, if that makes sense. So we've got our R-controlled syllable and our vowel team syllable. Then I've just got two more and then we'll wrap it up. Just wanted to show you a couple more examples. Vowels, we've got that R going on there. And then this is a diphthong. Okay, so we keep that together. And then we've got the usual. We've got our consonants, our vowels, got our consonants, and then we have our vowels. And so this one's pretty straightforward. At least we've got two consonants. We're going to divide it here. Okay, and then this often, I mean not always, but many times, our controlled vowels are at the end of a syllable. Not always. If you think about a word like dirt, it's not at the end of the syllable. But I know, even though we have, so I only wrote one consonant there, because the C and the L, remember, two different sounds, but they kind of get blended together so you can keep them together, right? The C and the L get blended together in that word. So I'm not going to divide the C and the L. I don't want to do that. I am going to divide the word before the consonant. So we have to keep an eye out for blends. And if you're just joining us, we did talk about blends with a different example and how you keep them together, even though it's two different sounds, but one blend, you want to keep them together. So you can go back and rewatch when we talked about this. But now we have thunder, cloud. Now this one is a diphthong syllable type, right? And then we have an R-controlled syllable type. Lori, so glad this is helpful. And Catherine, thank you so much for tagging your teacher friends. And then we have a closed syllable type, right? Thunder, cloud. So now you've seen a couple more syllable types. I use 7 different types. And then this last one. Okay, so I'm glad you stuck around for this last one because this one is a little bit different. And if you remember here, at the very beginning I said, look for ES, ING, or ED after T or D. So the kids don't start out learning this, but this is important because there are some words that are a little bit funky because of the endings that they have. Now, let's think about the word peaches. I know this is not what I have up here, but just imagine the word peaches. ES, peach, is, it says is, that word ending has a vowel sound in it, so we can just circle it, and that's going to be counted as a syllable by itself. Okay, so we're imagining the word peaches, we're going to circle ES, and there our division is done, right? Because we have that syllable. Great. ING can also be just circled and treated as its own syllable. Some words are a little bit weird with that, but you can just have the kids circle ING and then they see, okay, it's going to be divided there. Now, ED is tricky, and this is why I have this example, okay? It doesn't say ED in general, right? It says ED after T or D. So imagine the word looked, one syllable. And from Sounds of Spelling, we pound once, one syllable, okay? Looked. Now, looked has ED in it, right? E is a vowel. E and ED is a vowel, but looked only has one syllable, okay? In some words, unless there is, generally speaking, a T or a D before that ED ending, ED is not its own syllable. Looked, walked, yelled. In those words, they all have ED, but it's not its own syllable. But if the kids see ED after the letter T or D, then they can just circle it and treat it as its own syllable. They can just decode. You don't even have to go further than this. Dusted, dusted. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. The reason why it's on this poster is because as you teach these word endings and you work with more complex words with them, you can just have them look for these specific word endings and circle them so that they don't have to worry about, worrying about like where to divide the word, what to do with it. Those are things that they look for before they begin the process. So just a little tip about that. All right, well, those are all the example words that I had for you. I hope this was helpful. This went a lot longer than I planned, but I am so excited to have shared these with you. Again, would love to have you tag any teacher friends that this would be helpful for. Make sure you've got some comments in there because I will be pulling names randomly on Friday, and then the winners are going to get their little digital practice sets for either first or second grade, your choice. So make sure you get some comments in there. Also, if you're thinking about getting my phonics program where this is like all integrated and done for you, just a reminder that Friday is the last day for the big discount. So that's Friday, September 25th, 2020 at midnight Eastern time is when that discount goes away. You could also just get a unit or two if you prefer. So that discount is still on. And then also, if you have the program, heads up, you will be getting an email. So look for this email on September 26th. That should be Saturday. And if you have bought the program anytime before or anytime by the 25th, you're going to get a special invitation, and that invitation will invite you to a private Zoom session. And in that Zoom session, we're going to be talking about any questions that you have about the phonics program from sounds to spelling. So if you've bought by the 25th, look for that email on the 26th. It'll have the Zoom link. We'll all come in our little virtual room on Zoom. You can ask questions if you have questions about this or other stuff, or you're looking through the program. Definitely bring those. So look for that email. If you've got the program, look for that email on the 26th. And then I believe we're doing it the 29th, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. I think it's next Tuesday for that private session if you have the program. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching. Feel free to tag more teacher friends that this would be helpful to. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Come back and check on Friday to see if you won one of those little digital packs. Oh, Caroline, I'm sorry. The phonics program is at FromSoundsToSpelling.com. And if I miss anybody's questions, I apologize. I will come back and scroll through and see if I missed anything. Feel free to add comments if you're watching this afterward too, of course. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that so much. That means a lot to me. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you later.